It doesn't matter what kind of marketing you're doing, as long as the marketing you do reaches buyers. Let me explain that. Hi, this is Justin Hitt, and the only marketing that matters is the marketing that reaches buyers in your marketplace who are interested and able to take action with what it is that you have to offer. If what you call marketing does anything else, reaches unqualified prospects, reaches people who can't buy, reaches people who aren't interested, if any of your marketing does that, it is a big, fat waste of time, and you've got to stop immediately. Now, how do you know what works and what doesn't? See, I can't even get into the more advanced customer targeting methods, the more advanced customer profitability objectives that your business may have if you are not understanding the core concept of marketing must reach buyers. And how do you know what's reaching buyers? Well, you track it. You have tracking in place. You have codes and processes in place so that you know which marketing piece reaches what prospect, and you are absolutely assured to then profit in your business. Now, there are some challenges with what we're going to share, so I'm going to share with you a few of the common mistakes people make when they're doing their marketing and how these mistakes impact their profitability. The mistake starts simply with thinking that they can do the same big dumb marketing that all the big companies are doing, that all the big shots, Coca-Cola and those people are doing, which is called brand advertising. Yes, it's important that your customers know who you are and what it is that you do, but it's more important that they become customers to your business. At some point in time, every business was unknown. Every business needed to get their first customer. That first customer had no history. They basically took a leap of faith, and it was the toughest sale that business ever made. Now, if you can continue to do the job necessary to get that tough sale, then your marketing becomes significantly easier. If you remember back, it was a lot of pressing a flesh. It was a lot of networking. It was a lot of sending out direct mail. It was a lot of making telephone calls. It was a lot of doing everything that was necessary to get yourself in front of buyers. You didn't necessarily know what worked and what didn't work, but you got out there, and you got out there consistently. After business started to grow, a lot of times companies will slack off. They'll start saying, well, you know what, we got a good, consistent business. We don't need to worry about marketing too much. Word of mouth will take over because we do excellent work. And that's when you start letting up a little bit. You start slacking, and then eventually you get in trouble with the business over time. You have to know what works and what doesn't. The way you know what works and what doesn't is simply a matter of measures. If you were to hire a bunch of salespeople and bring them in an office, you wouldn't let them stay very long if they were not producing sales. This is a critical factor you must consider. These individuals would come into your office, take up your space, take up your time, require additional insurance, require additional obligations, and if they did not produce, then you'd have to let them go. Well, the same goes for your marketing pieces. Just because you got a website doesn't mean that you have to have a website. If that website's not producing, then it needs to go. If you have direct mail, if you have social media marketing, if you have anything going on, you have to let it go if it doesn't produce. How do you know what works and what doesn't? You package up your campaigns. Okay, it's like a project. How do you know if a project worked or didn't work? I work with a lot of contractors. They have this thing called project-based accounting, so that you know every job, was it profitable or unprofitable. They know that by coding it in their accounting system and then looking at a P&L for every activity. Now, it is not as easy as coding your marketing in your accounting system. You can do some of it by using source codes, which is the source of the customer. and then a campaign code or an ad code, which is the last campaign in which that customer received. And then as you get sales, you can then map the last contact and the first contact to have an idea of the process that got you that customer. You can do that in your accounting system. You can do that outside your system, but you have to understand that it must be tracked. It doesn't matter how you're doing it. There's lots of ways to do it, depending on what you have available to you. Might do it in your CRM system, for example. But here's the deal. Don't make the mistake of saying, well, you know what, it seems kind of difficult to know where customers are coming from, so we're going to do a lot of marketing, and we'll just see how things pan out. Cannot do that, because what happens when you send out your marketing dollars, let's say you've got a $10,000 a month budget for marketing, and you spend every penny every month, and it gets you 100 customers. So $10,000, 100 customers. It's about $100 per customer. That's actually a pretty good number, but you wouldn't know if it was a good number or a bad number unless you're measuring. But listen to it this way. Look at it this way. If you have a month where you don't get 100 customers or 100 leads, how do you know if it was the month that was the problem, the campaign that was the problem, the customer wasn't buying that month for some reason, maybe something else happened in the industry? How do you know? Well, there's some back-end math that can be done, and that's one of the things that my organization takes care of, but I'm going to give you the simple measures. By tracking which campaigns you're sending to people and who is responding to those campaigns, you can do what's called a self-select, so that those customers that are most likely to buy are in turn giving you feedback about what they want to buy, so that you're both adjusting your marketing campaign and your approach to reach the customers that are willing to take action. Here's how that works. And it just demonstrates the power of systems. You send your original marketing campaign. Let's say you do a postal mailing. You send the postal mailing. When you first start getting the NICSEs, which is the bad addresses, back, you mark that on a calendar. How many did you get back? When did it start coming? Mark it on the calendar. Your campaign will specifically ask for action, for the customer to raise their hand and do something specific, maybe provide information or schedule an appointment or something like that. When you get your first response from that perspective, you then write it down, put it on a calendar. Next, you code every individual who responds to your campaign. But you're going to tag everybody who gets the campaign. Then you're going to tag anybody who responds to the campaign, anybody who has a bad address, and then you're going to tag anybody who opted out. Now, it doesn't matter if this is email, postal mail, anything. This is what you're doing. You're essentially taking a larger list, taking a slice out of that list, what's called a select. That select is based on specific criteria in which we're going to match an offer. The offer goes out in some kind of campaign. It could be a couple postcards, could be a couple letters, could be a combination thereof, could be online, offline, all that stuff. That's your campaign. Each individual creative is tracked, so you know that part A, part B, part C, part D, which part is in creating results. The sub-lists, those tags, give you lists that tell you who's received what. Once you've gotten a drop-off of the responses, then you can send another campaign to everybody on the list who has not responded. So you take the original list, send it to everybody who has not responded, making the same offer as before, and then going back through the same cycle. How many addresses were bad? How many people responded? How many people, just keep going down the list. Now, of those people that responded, the coding is going to be all the same because in just a different time period. Of those people who responded, now you're going to track, of those who responded, how many became appointments, how many, were on the how we were able to contact on the telephone to follow up, and how many people just dropped off the list for some reason. Maybe you called them up and they said, yeah, we're not interested. The next layer of this onion. Of those people you've had appointments with, how many of those people became customers? Now, this is very interesting because it's the same means of measuring that you would use for a sales team, except instead of individual salespeople, we're looking at campaigns. Now, the great thing about a marketing campaign is you can send it to 12,000 people. You can send it to 1,100 people. You can send it to any number of people. Everyone gets delivered most of the time. The response is tracked, and just like a salesperson, you can tell who sells and who doesn't. In fact, you should give your marketing campaigns quotas and follow those quotas all the way down to the sale. Now, it doesn't matter if a salesperson closes the sale or the campaign itself offers something that the customer pays for. You will track all of these steps into closure. So how many appointments did your sales team get based on this marketing campaign sent at this particular date versus how many sales were produced? The number of sales you produce through a sales department will be pretty consistent on average. And very often you'll see a high percentage of those sales originating from the same source and the same marketing campaign. Now, this doesn't have to be 100% accurate out the gate. In fact, it will take a little bit of getting your staff used to this kind of tracking, because usually you'll send one marketing campaign, nothing happens, and then you quit. What I'm saying is don't make the mistake of doing once and done. Very often, it takes 7 to 9 contacts before you're going to get a customer to take any kind of action with an offer. Meaning they need to see that offer 7 to 9 times. And that offer could be as simple as an initial consultation, an appointment, or as complex as a specific package that you promoted. If you're using someone else's list, you're going to do what's called lead generation. When you fail to do lead generation, you fail to know anything about those individuals without some kind of large investment. And that's the biggest complaint I hear when people are doing direct mail or even internet marketing. I've put out a lot of money and I still don't have any sales. Well, show me your lead generation. Show me what that list told you about themselves and how they responded to soft offers or information offers or other entry-level opportunities to get involved with your organization. When you have lead generation in place, you're more able to sift and sort lists. So, for example, if you mail a list and you get a 4% response, meaning 4 out of every 10 names on that list, actually 4 out of every 100 names on that list, contact you and say, yes, I want to get involved. I want more information. And then if you have a 40% conversion rate of those people who requested information when followed up upon, 4 in 10 became customers, and they all originated from the same list, then you can expect a similar response if you mail the same list later. Now, one mistake people make is they think all this stuff is kind of static. A list today is different 5 months down the line. There could be new people on the list. It's like Gary Halbert talks about the moving parade. These prospects are parading in front of you, and a list of hospitals this year, hospitals and medical centers, could be different next year. And even if it's the same list next year, the people on the other end may not be the same people. So there you have a bit of attrition in the actual decision makers. And even if it's the same decision makers and the same list, their circumstances have changed. But the good news is, if you're doing lead generation on this list, You can do regular lead generation on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. Identify which of those campaigns produce a high number of leads. Here's the kicker. Here's the important part. High number of leads that become customers. And then those campaigns that produce a high number of leads that become customers, you can essentially repeat them the next year. And very often you can repeat them with the same list. You can repeat them with a list that looks similar. You can repeat them with another list. Maybe you've traded a list with one of your vendors that serves the same audience but doesn't compete with you. You know these things, and that's how you can call in an instant stream of income. That's how you can call in a cash surge in your business that is essentially on demand. The problem is, if you get into this you're kind of haphazardly doing campaigns every couple of weeks, and all summer long you didn't bother with a campaign because you were pretty busy. And if you do that, you will have piss poor measures. You literally have to do what I talked about. Send the campaign. Once you have what's called drop off, as soon as you have some drop off, then you're going to come in and send the next campaign. And you're going to let your list self-select who's interested and who's not. Now, another thing that you can do is what's called a prospect survey, and that further helps you self-select, but also determine the topic of your marketing campaigns so that your marketing campaigns are more relevant, they're more accurate, and they provide your customers more reasons to respond. It fulfills their desires in such a way that they are likely to raise their hand and say, tell me more about what you're offering. And at that point, again, you're measuring, but at that point, you are also able to start feeding that funnel. What are some other mistakes folks make? Well, they hear what I'm describing and they say, whoa, man, that's way too complex. Our office is never going to be able to do that. Well, if you can't do monthly, at least do quarterly. If you can't do quarterly, at least do something twice a year. But you've got to do something. And you also need to mix it up. Remember, marketing that works is marketing that's in front of buyers. Well, you can go after the same list and have 2% of people buy from you every time you go after them, every time you interact with them. And of the dollars you spend, you get the exact number of dollars back. So you're what's called breaking even on the campaign. And still, some people will throw up their hands and say, oh, this doesn't work. This is no good. Because they had poor expectations. Their expectations were that there would be, I'd send a letter out, spend $20,000 on a marketing campaign, send a letter out, and get $4 million in return because there were 4,000 people on the list and their average ticket. No, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen slowly and surely. But what you need to immediately have is a follow-on sale. You can't be once and done with the first transaction. You can't get a list together and then go after new people. List segmentation is really about, once somebody becomes a customer, it's about knowing who is the customer and then sending them different offers, maybe even the same offer, but in a different way, so that you can get repeat sales. Because it's going to cost a lot more money than you might expect to get that first customer, but a whole lot less money than the initial investment to get the customer to buy a second time, especially if you've done good work. But unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't follow up with their customers. They fail to establish any cadence in the interaction, and they don't make enough offers to their list. Let's talk a little bit about offers. An offer is something specific, time determinate, and not necessarily a discount. An offer might be, for example, to do an initial consultation where you're going to do a 12-point inspection of whatever it is that they have, and you're going to offer your recommendations. And so there's some kind of report of findings. The offer is going to, part of the offer materials, what comes with the offer, is going to explain why this is value, what is the benefit, the reason why you're offering it, the reasons why they might take advantage of it, all those details. with all those details in hand, you still won't get 100% of people to say, yes, let's do it. But you will always get enough people to take action if the offer is relevant to that audience. When you're measuring the profitability of each individual campaign. You're keeping the campaigns that are successful and you're replacing the ones that are not. What is the success of a campaign? How is it defined? Well, the success of a campaign is simply, did the campaign get me new customers at break even or better? There are many cases where you would want to get customers at a loss in order to offer them something immediately. So the initial purchase identifies a need, and then you can go into more detail during the install or during the follow-up in order to get the second sale. You might be in a situation where your customers, when they do projects, they may have a project every 6 months to a year, and there may not be an immediate follow-on sale unless you're doing services or something like that. Well, you got to work that into the plan. You've got to understand that in your marketing case. To understand this, you want to develop what's called customer interaction points. This is a mapping of every interaction your customer has with the problems you could solve. And in that way, you can come back into the business at appropriate times around the problems that they have to solve. You want to use things like a prospect newsletter in order to stay in front of customers on a consistent basis with what's called a prospect newsletter that basically helps them stay involved with the topics, gives them advice, gives them insights, works with them as a customer or a prospect to keep you in front of them in a positive way. You'd be surprised, a prospect newsletter can very often be more entertainment than talking about your business. But the key is the association of value with what it is you do and who it is that you are as a business. Avoid the mistake of not trying these things, but even more importantly, avoid the mistake of trying these things in a haphazard, unproductive way. It is very possible that if you just start sending campaigns, that you might not get any results at all. And that might be because, for various reasons, and I'll explain them here. You may have bad copy. So what you're sharing with the customer is no interest to them. You might have great copy, but you're putting it in front of an audience who doesn't give a damn. You might have great copy, an audience that cares, but the offer is not relevant to their immediate needs, so they file it away. There's probably 50 or 60 reasons why somebody doesn't respond right away. So response rates of 1% and 2% are acceptable as long as you've built the math in order to actually profit. So you have to have an offer large enough to make a profit. Your initial offer may not even be a transaction, a monetary transaction. Your initial offer might just be for your prospect to come into a showroom, to ask for more information, to request an information kit, to see a demonstration, to have an assessment done of their site or facility, to have you come out on site and look over a specific problem they're facing and offer recommendations. There are many reasons why a customer might have that first step. Your objective is to be in front of buyers and offer things that help them make buying decisions with your company. Don't skimp here. Up front, you want to make it easy for someone to decide to do business with you based on information they requested as part of their research or vendor selection. In the case of business to business, you want audience-specific materials relevant to the procurement manager, the engineering contacts, the owners of the company, the different people who will make decisions about your particular business. Those individuals each receive materials relevant to them. Now, it's possible that they all receive the same brochure if you have a good brochure that you know works. Now, brochures don't usually work, but you could open with a cover letter and a brochure and maybe a sales sheet, and that very often will work if the cover letter is done correctly. You can do this in other areas, such as through public relations. Public relations, even if you're not selling to the general public, can help get customer success stories, profiles about your type of business or issues in the industry. It helps get these things into media, which would be newspapers, magazines, television, different publications, even in trade publications, and which will give you an opportunity for a reprint that you can then send to your customers as part of the credibility side of a campaign. See, it's a mistake to limit yourself on doing anything specific, and instead try 5 separate things, documented well, implemented effectively, and then coded to track so that you know what works and what doesn't. Coding to track also means that you know how much this costs, so you can easily take aside a certain percentage of your budget. So if you're spending $20,000 a month on marketing, set aside 10 to 20% of that for just test marketing. Now, eventually, your tests will prove what works and what doesn't. You'll do more of what works. You'll spend about 80% of your time doing what works, 20% of your time testing against it. That's a very conservative approach, but it's an approach that opens doors for the long-term prosperity of your business. Because as you build a library of what works, you'll be able to very easily drive sales on demand. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, I know I covered a lot of information. We hold group coaching calls where you don't have to be a member or anything. You don't have to give me any money. You can join these coaching calls and you can ask your specific questions about creating and keeping profitable customers, turning business relationships into profits, growing your organization through direct mail, events, social media, internet marketing, whatever. There's hundreds of ways to grow your business. But I want you to understand there won't be just one way to grow your business. There are always multiple ways to get in front of buyers. And once you know, I don't want to leave you without this, you got to know your customer, because when you have a customer profile, it makes it a lot easier to find those customers out of the open market. And it really defines what media you should use or shouldn't use, because you want to know, if you know where the buyers are, you can just simply go to them. Instead of all this dicking around on the internet, setting up websites and sitting around waiting for someone to come along. But if you have any questions about what we're presenting here, contact our offices. We'll be happy to answer your questions. We'll be happy to work with you one-on-one and provide resources to get you started. I'm Justin Itt. Thanks for listening.